decades, people have been told that their genes determine their future. Bad metabolism? Genetic. Heart disease in the family? Probably inevitable. Weight struggles? Just bad genetics. Autoimmune tendencies? Unlucky. And for a long time, that created this belief that our biology is fixed, that our health trajectory is largely predetermined. But epigenetics completely changes that conversation, because epigenetics is not about changing your DNA. It's about how your environment influences the way your genes are expressed. And this is one of the most important concepts in modern health science. Your genes are not a life sentence. They are biological instructions responding to the signals your body receives every single day. So the real question becomes, what signals are you consistently sending your biology? That's what I want to explore in this video. Because once you understand epigenetics properly, health stops becoming about luck and starts becoming much more about biological influence over time. So first, what actually is epigenetics? The easiest way to think about it is this. Your DNA is the blueprint. Epigenetics determines which parts of that blueprint get amplified, activated, or quietened. And for those instructions, respond constantly to things like sleep, stress, nutrition, exercise, inflammation, toxin exposure, recovery, psychological load. These inputs act almost like dimmer switches for biological pathways. This is why two people with similar genetic predispositions can end up with completely different health outcomes. One person may build resilience, another may gradually accumulate dysfunction. Not because their DNA changed, but because the signals influencing gene expression were different over time. And this matters massively when we start talking about long-term health, because most chronic disease does not appear suddenly. Metabolic dysfunction, cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, inflammatory conditions. These are often the result of cumulative physiological signals occurring over years and decades. That's what epigenetics really represents. The long-term influence of lifestyle and environment on biology. One of the clearest places we see this is metabolic health. People often reduce metabolism down to calories alone, but metabolism is incredibly influenced by stress physiology, inflammation, sleep quality, nervous system state, mitochondrial function, and hormone regulation. When the body receives chronic signals of stress under recovery, inflammation, or poor sleep, gene expression patterns can gradually shift towards survival physiology rather than optimization. That affects insulin sensitivity, fat storage, energy production, appetite regulation, recovery capacity. And this is why someone can be training consistently, eating relatively well, trying very hard, and still not feel like their body is responding the way it should. Because physiology is more complex than discipline alone. And I think this is where a lot of high performers become frustrated, because they feel like they're doing everything right. They're training, they're taking supplements, they're tracking their health, they're trying to optimize. But generic health advice doesn't account for biological individuality. Your baseline predispositions influence how you respond to carbs, how you clear stress hormones, how inflammatory your system becomes under pressure, how resilient your nervous system is, how efficiently you detoxify environmental load. Two people can follow the exact same protocol and get completely different outcomes. That's not failure, that's biological variation. And this is where personalization becomes important. Another major epigenetic driver is stress. And honestly, I think stress is one of the most underestimated physiological disruptors in modern high-performing populations, because people often think of stress purely psychologically. But biologically, chronic stress changes cortisol signaling, blood sugar regulation, inflammatory pathways, sleep quality, recovery capacity, and nervous system regulation. And over time, those changes influence gene expression patterns linked to metabolic dysfunction and long-term disease risk. And this is why high-functioning people can often appear healthy externally while accumulating significant physiological strain internally. The body keeps score biologically. Inflammation is another huge epigenetic signal, and low-grade inflammation is extremely common now. This can come from poor sleep, gut dysfunction, underfueling, environmental exposures, psychological stress, recovery deficits. When inflammatory pathways stay chronically activated, recovery slows, resilience declines, and disease risk gradually increases over time. This does not mean people need to become obsessive about health, but it does mean we need to understand that biology responds to cumulative inputs. The body adapts to environment it perceives repeatedly. So then the obvious question becomes, how do you know whether epigenetic stress is affecting you? And the truth is, this applies to everyone to some degree. We are all aging. The real question is, are we creating signals that support resilience or dysfunction over time? Some common signs that physiology may be under cumulative strain include persistent fatigue, poor recovery, weight resistance, brain fog, frequent illness, unstable appetite, inflammatory symptoms, declining stress tolerance. And importantly, these things are not always explained properly by the standard generic advice. This is where I think naturopathic medicine becomes really valuable when it's applied properly, because a structured naturopathic approach is not just take these supplements. It's about understanding systems. It's about looking at stress physiology, sleep, recovery, nutrition, inflammation, nervous system regulation, genetics, metabolic patterns, lifestyle inputs, and asking, where are the bottlenecks? Where is physiology struggling to adapt? Where is the body receiving conflicting signals? This is also where genetic testing can become very useful, because epigenetics explains that environment influences gene expression, but genetic testing helps us understand how your individual system is likely to respond to those environmental inputs. For example, how you regulate inflammation, how you clear stress hormones, how your methylation pathways function, how efficient detoxification pathways are, what nutrients may require greater support, how resilient your nervous system may be under load. Without that insight, optimization becomes much more trial and error. With personalization, we can become more strategic. And I think this is the really important mindset shift. The goal is not perfection. The goal is not fear around genetics. The goal is understanding your biology well enough to reduce unnecessary friction inside of the system. Because your genes are not your destiny, but they do influence tendencies. And when you understand those tendencies, you can make decisions that better support long-term health, performance, resilience, and longevity. There are also some foundational things that influence epigenetics positively regardless of genetic background. You've got things like resistance training, adequate protein intake, good sleep quality, circadian rhythm alignment, managing stress, proper recovery, avoiding chronic underfueling, reducing inflammatory load. These are powerful biological signals. Consistency matters more than extremes, But if someone feels like they're doing all of those things and still not getting the outcomes they expect, that's often where deeper personalization becomes valuable. Because sometimes the missing piece is not more discipline, it's better biological understanding. If you're interested in genetics, epigenetics, performance optimization, longevity, or understanding your own physiology more deeply, that's exactly the kind of work I do through my genetic predisposition package and consultations. I'm Sarah from Biohacking Naturopath, Australia's performance-focused naturopath.